the smile that ended the laugh. The enemy fleet stood proud in front of them. Countless ships, each one bristling with weapons, glowing with power, and confident in their superiority. The human fleet was a mere shadow in comparison, outnumbered and outgunned. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The enemy fleet's commander, a towering alien, stared down at the human fleet with a smug grin, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. "Pathetic," he scoffed, voice booming across the vast distance between them. "You think you stand a chance against us? We will crush you in an instant. You are nothing but insects beneath our boots." The human captain, standing on the bridge of his ship, listened to the taunts. His face remained calm, betraying no emotion. He stood tall, a man who had led countless battles, yet this one felt different. The odds were stacked impossibly high against them. His crew looked to him for guidance, their eyes full of doubt and fear. Then, a slight smirk appeared on the captain's face. The enemy commander noticed it, and it only seemed to fuel his confidence even more. "What's so funny, human?" the alien barked. "Do you think you can win? Do you think you can stop us? You're a fool if you believe that." The captain did not respond immediately. He simply watched the alien with a quiet intensity. His crew shifted uneasily, some whispering to each other, others unsure whether the captain's smile was one of hope or desperation. And then, with a voice that carried the weight of years of experience, the captain spoke. "You're wrong. I know exactly what I'm up against, and you'll soon understand why that smile is the last thing you'll ever see." The alien commander's face twisted in disbelief. "What are you talking about, human?" he asked, clearly growing impatient. "Do you really think your pathetic ship can withstand our might?" The captain's smirk remained, almost as if he were waiting for the perfect moment to unleash something that would turn the tide of the battle. The enemy fleet continued to laugh, mocking the humans, but something about the captain's demeanor made the air around them feel heavy, charged with an ominous energy. "Take a good look at the stars," the captain continued, his voice soft yet firm, "because after today, they will never be the same again." The crew aboard the human ship exchanged puzzled glances. No one had ever seen their captain act this way. His calmness was unnerving, especially when faced with an enemy so much stronger. They didn't know what to expect, but they knew something was coming. The tension built to a breaking point, and for the first time, they could feel the weight of what was at stake. The enemy laughed harder, mocking them, thinking they had already won. The fleet's weapons powered up, ready to strike. The moment of truth was approaching. The human fleet had no chance in a direct confrontation, but the captain had a plan, a secret that even his own crew did not know. As the enemy prepared to fire, the captain's smirk widened just slightly. His eyes never left the enemy commander, who was still gloating from across the void. Without a word, the captain turned toward his officers, signaling them to prepare. The crew sprang into action, moving with practiced efficiency, though no one knew exactly what they were preparing for. The enemy seemed oblivious, their victory all but certain in their eyes. But the human captain knew better. He had known all along that the enemy's laughter would soon turn to terror. "Fire when ready," the captain said, his voice now cold and commanding. The crew hesitated for a moment before carrying out his orders. No one had expected the captain's plan to involve something so drastic. The weapons systems hummed to life, and the once disorganized human fleet locked onto their targets. In the distance, the enemy ships moved in to strike. The final moments were at hand, and the smug alien fleet prepared to launch their devastating barrage of energy. But just as they were about to fire, a sudden burst of energy erupted from the human ships. A massive shockwave spread across the battlefield, ripping through space itself. The enemy ships shook violently as the invisible force slammed into them. The once laughing commanders aboard the enemy ships were silenced as their vessels were knocked off course. It was not a traditional weapon. It was something much more dangerous. The captain's smirk was no longer the only thing hiding a secret. It was the entire human fleet. "Impossible," The alien commander roared as his ships faltered, their systems malfunctioning. "What did you do?" The captain, still calm, stepped forward. "You thought we were weak, but you underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. This isn't over yet." With the enemy fleet disoriented, the human ships surged forward. The battlefield was no longer about strength or numbers. It was about strategy, and the humans had the advantage now. The enemy commander's arrogance turned to fear as the human fleet closed in. The captain's smile had not been one of arrogance or defeat. It had been the quiet confidence of a warrior who knew exactly how to turn the tide in the final moments. But this was just the beginning. The true fight had only just begun. The alien fleet was in chaos. Their ships swayed erratically, systems flickering as their once untouchable superiority now seemed fragile. Their enemy, the humans, were far from the weaklings they had once believed them to be. For a moment, confusion swept across the battlefield, leaving the alien commanders scrambling for answers. What happened? The alien commander barked, his hands gripping the control panel, eyes wide with disbelief. His once proud fleet was struggling to regain control, their weapons failing and shields flickering as if they were little more than toys. The captain of the human fleet stood silently, watching the devastation unfold. His crew, though nervous, followed his orders without hesitation, trusting that they had only scratched the surface of what the captain had planned. His calm demeanor remained unshaken, though the battle was far from over. It was just the beginning. "Captain," said Lieutenant Zara, a trusted officer on the bridge. "What was that? What did we just do to them?" The captain's gaze remained fixed on the enemy fleet, now reeling. That, Lieutenant, was only the first step. He turned to face her, his eyes serious. "The weapon I just deployed is something they will never have seen before. It's not just our technology they're up against. It's something different, something that even we didn't fully understand until recently." Zara furrowed her brow. But it worked. What was that burst of energy? It looked like it tore through their systems like paper. The captain nodded. It did. That burst was a concentrated pulse from the ancient technology we found on the derelict warship. I knew we'd need more than just firepower to defeat this enemy. That ship, and the secrets it holds, are our key to victory. The rest of the crew listened intently, knowing that their survival rested on understanding this mysterious weapon. It was clear now that the humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting with a hidden advantage, one the aliens would never expect. The captain's mind raced back to the discovery of the forgotten warship, a massive ancient vessel buried deep in a desolate part of the galaxy. It had been abandoned for centuries, but it wasn't just any ship. It had once been a symbol of power, a force feared across the galaxy. But when the humans found it, it was nothing more than a wreck, a relic, left to rot in the depths of space. But the ship wasn't empty. Deep within its hull, buried beneath layers of decaying metal, was technology unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The captain had understood its significance immediately, though at first, even he hadn't fully realized its potential. He had studied the ship's systems, carefully piecing together the technology that powered it. The key, he realized, was not in the weapons or the armor, but in a hidden reactor, one that could manipulate energy in ways beyond human comprehension. The weapon he had just used on the alien fleet was only a small fraction of what it could truly do. Zara watched him closely, sensing the gravity of what he was saying. "So we have a weapon they don't even understand yet." "Exactly," the captain replied, his voice low. "And once we reveal all of its capabilities, they won't stand a chance." Back on the battlefield, the alien commander was growing frantic. His fleet was disoriented, but they were regaining their composure. However, the initial shock was enough to throw them off balance, giving the humans precious moments to strike. The alien commander's voice crackled over the comms as he barked orders to his fleet. "Get your ships together. Regain control of your weapons and shields. We can't let them think they have the upper hand." But even as the enemy scrambled to regroup, the humans weren't standing still. They moved with precision, coordinating their attacks and making use of the chaos they had created. The alien fleet, once certain of victory, now had to contend with an enemy they didn't fully understand. The tide had shifted. "Captain," another officer called out, his voice filled with urgency. "The enemy is repositioning. They're preparing to counterattack. They're regaining their strength." The captain stood tall, his expression unchanged. "Let them try. We've only begun to show them what we're capable of." Zara nodded, understanding the captain's calm confidence. The true power of the ancient warship had yet to be revealed. The weapon they had deployed was only a taste, a warning to the alien fleet of what was coming next. The enemy, though still reeling from the unexpected blow, had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. They had thought the humans were weak, that they were nothing more than a small primitive species. But now, they were facing something far more dangerous than they could imagine. "Get ready," the captain said, his voice steady. "This is just the beginning. When we unleash the full power of this ship, they won't know what hit them." With a steady hand, he turned to the helm. The next phase of the plan was about to begin. The crew watched him with a mix of awe and anticipation, knowing that their survival and their victory depended on the captain's vision. As the human fleet prepared for their next strike, the alien commander's laughter from earlier felt like a distant memory. The human captain had shown them one thing, the true face of humanity's fury, and it was far from over. The silence on the bridge of the human warship was deafening as the crew members anxiously awaited their captain's next orders. The alien fleet, still reeling from the earlier strike, now hovered at the edge of their formation, desperately trying to reassemble their forces. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were in for a rude awakening. Captain Bryce stood tall, his eyes locked on the view screen where the flickering image of the enemy fleet appeared. It was clear that the aliens were trying to regroup, but they had no idea what was about to hit them. "Are we ready, Captain?" Lieutenant Zora asked, her voice steady, but with an undercurrent of anticipation. Captain Bryce gave a slight nod. "We've only shown them a fraction of our power. But now, it's time to reveal what they've really awoken." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They had known that the ship they were aboard held immense power, but none of them had seen its full potential. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment that would determine whether they could truly overcome the alien invaders. Bryce's voice broke the silence. "Activate the core." The hum of the ship's systems filled the air as the engineers began inputting commands. Slowly, the ship's power surged, and the faint ancient glow of the reactor deep within the vessel began to grow brighter. Zara leaned over the console, watching as the reactor's energy levels began to spike. "This is it, Captain. Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure," Bryce replied, his voice calm, almost eerily so. "We have no other choice now." The ship's energy levels were rising at an alarming rate, and the entire vessel seemed to shudder with the intensity of the power building inside. The ancient warship had been dormant for centuries, but now, under the command of the humans, it was coming back to life. The aliens had thought they were dealing with an old, abandoned relic, but they had no idea that it was about to become the galaxy's most fearsome weapon. Back in the alien fleet, the commander watched with growing anxiety. His ships, though still formidable, were scattered and disorganized, their morale shattered. They had expected to crush the humans quickly, but they hadn't anticipated a fight like this. "Do we engage now, Commander?" an officer asked, his voice filled with worry. "The humans. They're doing something. Something we don't understand." The alien commander narrowed his eyes, staring at the human fleet. He could feel it, the shift in the air. The change was undeniable. He had underestimated them, but that mistake would not happen again. "Not yet," the commander replied, his voice harsh. "We'll wait for them to make the first move. When they do, we'll crush them." But deep down, the commander was unsure. What had begun as an easy conquest was now spiraling into an unpredictable battle. The humans, they had something. something beyond their understanding. On the human warship, Bryce turned to face his crew. This is it. We're about to show them who we really are. Once we hit them with this, they'll never forget the power of humanity. The reactor's glow was now blinding, the energy crackling through the ship's systems like a living force. The crew could feel it. This was no longer just a warship. This was something ancient, something far beyond what they could have imagined when they first discovered it. Zara swallowed, her eyes wide with awe. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? If we fire this, there may be no turning back. There's no turning back, Bryce replied. The galaxy needs to know the truth. Humanity is not a species to be underestimated. And we're about to prove it. The ship shuddered once more as the weapon's power reached its peak. Bryce motioned to the officer at the helm. Fire. In the blink of an eye, a massive beam of pure energy shot out from the warship's core. The beam was so intense that it seemed to split the very fabric of space itself. It sliced through the void, heading straight for the alien fleet. The alien commander watched in disbelief as the beam approached. There was no time to react. He had never seen anything like it. The energy shot through their fleet with terrifying precision, cutting down ships like they were made of paper. Explosions erupted in all directions, the shockwaves rippling through the enemy's formation. It wasn't just the power of the weapon that struck fear into the aliens. It was the fact that they had no idea what had just happened. They had no frame of reference for the kind of technology the humans were using. In a matter of moments, the once proud alien fleet had been reduced to burning wreckage, scattered and disorganized. The humans had only fired once, and already the enemy was in disarray. The captain of the human warship stood tall as the chaos unfolded before him. There was no smirk on his face now, only cold, calculating precision. The aliens had laughed at them before. Now, they would understand the full force of the human spirit. Zara couldn't believe her eyes. Captain, we just wiped out half their fleet with one shot. Bryce nodded slowly, his face grim. This is only the beginning. The true power of this ship hasn't even been unleashed yet, and once we do, the galaxy will know what happens when they challenge humanity. But in the wreckage of the alien fleet, one thought ran through the mind of every surviving alien. They had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. The aftermath of the devastating strike was chaos. The once imposing alien fleet was now scattered and in disarray, their ships burning and tumbling through space. The survivors, barely able to maintain their formation, had no idea how to regroup or retaliate. Their commander, once so confident, was now left speechless, watching his forces crumble before his eyes. On the human warship, Captain Bryce remained calm, his eyes cold and focused. He could feel the weight of the decision he had just made, but it had been necessary. Humanity had been mocked, underestimated, and dismissed by the galaxy for far too long. Now it was their turn to show the universe what they were truly capable of. Status report, Lieutenant Zara, Bryce ordered, his voice even and controlled. Zara, standing near her station, quickly ran her fingers over the console. The alien fleet is broken, Captain. They've lost over half their ships. Most of them are retreating, but a few are still trying to regroup. We're not done yet. Captain Bryce nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Prepare the next phase. We finish this now. Zara hesitated for a moment, her fingers hovering over the controls. Are you sure, Captain? There are survivors out there. If we continue, we might wipe them out completely. Bryce's eyes narrowed as he stared out into the void. They made their choice when they attacked us. There is no mercy in war. We finish what we started. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew prepared for the final blow. The alien ships that remained were now in full retreat, but they were still formidable. They had powerful shields, advanced weapons, and experienced pilots. However, none of that mattered now. The humans had something they didn't: the power of a long-forgotten warship, a vessel so ancient and so destructive that it could change the course of an entire battle in a single moment. The ship's systems hummed to life as the crew engaged the weapons array once more. The ancient reactor, now fully awakened, pulsed with energy, and the ship began to glow with an eerie, otherworldly light. The human crew members watched in awe, knowing that this wasn't just a weapon. This was the very soul of their past, their heritage, and their future. Meanwhile, the alien commander, who had once laughed at humanity, was now facing the full force of his mistake. His fleet had been destroyed with a single shot, and he had no way to counter the human warship. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, but now they would all pay the price for that error. The commander's voice crackled through the comms, his tone desperate and filled with fear. "This is Commander Tattle of the Xaloran fleet. We surrender. Please, stop. We did not know the full extent of your power." But Bryce wasn't interested in surrender. He had heard enough from the aliens. Their arrogance, their mockery, their assumption that they could easily wipe out humanity. It had all come crashing down. The enemy had made their choice when they launched the first attack, and now it was time for humanity to prove that they were not to be trifled with. Bryce's voice was low, almost cold, when he spoke. "Your fleet is already lost. The damage has been done, and you will answer for your actions." Zara looked at her captain, her eyes filled with a mix of awe and concern. "Captain, are you really going to destroy them all, even after they surrendered?" Bryce turned to her, his expression unyielding. They had their chance to make peace. They chose war. Now they will learn that humanity fights to win. With a signal from Bryce, the crew activated the ship's weapons once more. This time, the ship unleashed its full power. A blinding flash of light erupted from the warship's core, sending out a shockwave that reverberated through space. The remaining alien ships were torn apart in an instant, their shields no match for the raw energy coursing through the human warship's weapon systems. The alien commander, now nothing more than a distant, hopeless figure, watched as his fleet was obliterated. His heart sank as he realized there was no escape, no mercy, no hope left for him or his forces. The humans had done what no one expected. They had shown that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, they were a force to be reckoned with. "Captain, it's over," Zara said, her voice shaking slightly. "We've done it. We've won." Bryce turned to face her, his eyes cold but full of determination. "We haven't won yet. The galaxy is watching us, Zora. They're all going to know what happens when they make humanity their enemy." The crew of the human warship watched in silence as the final remnants of the alien fleet were destroyed. The mission had been a success, but the cost was high. Bryce knew that this was only the beginning. Their victory would send ripples through the galaxy, and soon others would come to test humanity's resolve. But one thing was certain: they would be ready. The human captain stood tall, a symbol of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. And as he watched the stars stretch out before them, Bryce knew that no matter what came next, humanity's place in the galaxy had just been secured. In the aftermath of the battle, the human warship remained motionless in the vastness of space, the crew quiet and focused. The air on the bridge was heavy, thick with the tension of what had just transpired. The alien fleet that had once loomed so large, so confident, was now nothing more than a pile of debris drifting in the void. Yet, the victory felt hollow. The echoes of the conflict still rang in Captain Bryce's mind. He stood at the command console, his gaze fixed on the empty space ahead. The ship's lights flickered gently, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the ancient reactor. Despite the quiet, Bryce could feel the weight of what they had done. "Captain," Zara said, her voice breaking the silence. She stepped up beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. "The enemy has been eliminated. The mission is a success. But I can't shake this feeling. We've destroyed a fleet, an entire civilization. Do you ever wonder if we've gone too far?" Bryce turned to her, his eyes steady. "No, Lieutenant. They attacked us. They mocked us. They had no respect for humanity's power. This is the price they had to pay. You can't question that." Zara nodded, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "I understand, Captain. I never imagined it would feel like this. I thought we'd be celebrating, but instead, there's only emptiness." The captain didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned back to the viewport, where the wreckage of the alien ships floated like broken toys. "War is never easy, Zara. We fought to protect humanity, but there will always be consequences." The crew had done their part. The battle was over, and humanity had won, but Bryce could feel the burden of leadership weighing heavily on him. The ancient warship that they had awoken from its slumber had given them unimaginable power, but with that power came responsibility. A responsibility that was now staring him in the face. The message from the galaxy was clear. Humanity was not to be trifled with. They were no longer the weak, helpless species the galaxy had once dismissed. They had proven themselves as a force to be reckoned with. But that victory, hard-won and costly, would not be without its challenges. "Prepare a message to the Galactic Council," Bryce ordered, his voice firm. "Let them know what happened here today. Let them know what they can expect from humanity." Zara hesitated but then nodded. She moved to her station and began typing the message, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Bryce watched her, his mind racing with the possibilities. He had known that this battle would send a shockwave through the galaxy, but he hadn't anticipated just how far-reaching the consequences would be. "I sent it, Captain," Zara said, turning back to him. "The message has been transmitted to all major systems. The galaxy will know what humanity is capable of." Bryce took a deep breath. The hard part was over. Now, they would have to face the fallout. The universe had seen humanity's power, and while some might tremble at the thought, others would surely see it as a challenge. There would be those who would come to test them, to push them, to see if humanity could truly hold its ground. "Good," Bryce said, his voice steady. "Now, we wait." But waiting wasn't easy. The silence on the ship grew more intense as time passed. The crew worked in quiet efficiency, maintaining the ship's systems, monitoring the data from the battle. Yet, despite their professionalism, the unease lingered in the air like a heavy fog. Hours passed, then days. The silence was only broken by occasional transmissions from the outer colonies, where the news of the battle had already spread. The reports were mixed. Some were in awe of the human warship's power, while others were fearful of what humanity's newfound strength might mean. The galaxy had already begun to react, but it was still too soon to know how things would unfold. Captain Bryce's mind never stopped. He knew that the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. They had proven their strength, their resolve, and their ability to fight back when cornered. But Bryce understood that this wasn't just about fighting. This was about surviving, and surviving meant more than just winning battles. The message from the galaxy would come. Bryce was certain of that. And when it did, he would have to make decisions that would shape humanity's future. There was no turning back now. "Captain," Zara said, breaking his thoughts. She stood at her station, her voice soft but urgent. "We've just received a transmission from the Galactic Council." Bryce's eyes sharpened. "Patch it through," he ordered, stepping forward. A moment later, the screen flickered to life. The image of a stern-looking alien representative appeared. The alien's green skin and multifaceted eyes conveyed a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Captain Bryce," the representative said, his voice cold but respectful, "we have received your message, and we are intrigued by your victory. However, there is much to discuss. Humanity's actions have not gone unnoticed. There are those who believe this event changes the balance of power in the galaxy." Bryce stood tall, his jaw set with resolve. "Let them believe what they will," he said. "We did what we had to do. Humanity is not afraid to defend itself, and we will never back down." The representative didn't respond immediately. His eyes studied Bryce for a long moment, And then he nodded slowly. "We will be watching, Captain. The galaxy is watching. Be prepared for what comes next." The transmission cut off, leaving Bryce standing there, alone with his thoughts. The galaxy had seen them now. The question was, would they fear humanity's power, or would they seek to challenge it? One thing was certain: Captain Bryce and humanity were ready for whatever came next. The days that followed the transmission from the Galactic Council were filled with a heavy silence. The crew of the human warship went about their tasks, maintaining the ship's systems, keeping their readiness high. Yet, a growing unease hung in the air. The victory, so hard-won and seemingly decisive, felt more like the calm before a storm. Captain Bryce stood at the bridge, his eyes scanning the starry expanse outside. He had expected this. After all, no one in the galaxy would let humanity's victory go unchallenged. In the cold depths of space, power was everything, and now humanity had proven it could hold its own. Zara, now more alert than ever, stood beside him. She watched him closely, her mind clearly racing with the same questions that occupied his thoughts. "Do you think the Council will act soon?" she asked, her voice low. Their message was clear enough. Humanity's actions haven't gone unnoticed. We might be facing something bigger than a few scattered enemies. Bryce nodded slowly, but his expression remained stoic. "I've been expecting it. You don't claim power in this galaxy without making enemies. We've ruffled feathers. The question is, who will make the first move?" Before Zara could reply, the communications officer spoke up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving an urgent transmission from one of the outer colonies. It's marked as high priority." Bryce's heart skipped a beat. He turned swiftly to face the officer. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing the human officer from one of the frontier colonies. Her face was pale, and there was a sense of urgency in her eyes. "Captain Bryce, sir, we've encountered something strange. There's an alien fleet on the move. They've gathered in a sector near our border. And it's not just any fleet." Bryce leaned forward, his focus sharp. "What do you mean, not just any fleet?" The officer swallowed hard. They're forming an alliance. Several alien species, all enemies of humanity, have joined forces. They've already begun advancing toward our colony. Zara's eyes widened with shock, but Bryce's face remained calm, though his mind raced with the implications. "How many ships are we talking about?" he asked, his voice even. "Hundreds, Captain, all heavily armed. They've made it clear they're coming to take us down. They're calling it a galactic reconciliation, a chance to correct what they see as the imbalance caused by humanity's victory." Bryce's jaw clenched. He knew this was coming. He had expected retaliation, but this level of coordination, this amount of firepower, was something else entirely. "We'll be there," Bryce said firmly. "Send us the coordinates, Lieutenant." The officer nodded quickly. "Aye, Captain. Sending now." The screen blinked off, and the crew immediately moved into action. Orders were given, and the warship hummed to life. It had been hours since they had received word of the new threat, but to Bryce, it felt like days. He knew that humanity's place in the galaxy was now under siege, and this would be a fight like no other. Zara stepped up beside him once again. "Captain, are we really ready for this? A fleet this big, can we win?" Bryce met her gaze, his eyes cold and determined. "We have no choice. We'll face them head-on. We're not backing down. Humanity doesn't give up." As the ship prepared for the long journey to the coordinates, Bryce couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had always been a battleground for power, and humanity had now become a central player. As they made their way toward the confrontation, Bryce took a moment to reflect. The victory they had achieved was no longer just a battle. It was the spark that would ignite something far larger. He couldn't help but feel a sense of dread, though. The galaxy was vast, and while humanity had proven itself formidable, the unknown lay ahead. Hours passed in tense anticipation as the warship moved at full speed toward the alien fleet's location. The crew worked tirelessly, preparing for what they knew would be a bloody and dangerous battle. Bryce knew there was no turning back now. There would be no retreat, no surrender. As they approached the enemy's position, Bryce stepped forward, his heart pounding. His hand hovered over the console. He would soon be making decisions that could determine the fate of humanity. "Captain," Zora said quietly, stepping beside him. "Whatever happens, we've shown the galaxy who we are. Humanity's not just a side player anymore. We're a force." Bryce looked at her, his eyes burning with conviction. "And we'll prove it once again. The galaxy's about to learn why they should never underestimate humanity." The warship slowed as they neared the enemy fleet's position. Through the viewport, Bryce could see the dark shapes of the alien ships slowly taking form, their ominous silhouettes against the backdrop of stars. The calm that had settled over the crew evaporated as the reality of the situation set in. They were facing something far bigger than they had ever imagined, but the human spirit was strong. No matter how fierce the storm, humanity would fight to survive. "Ready all weapons," Bryce commanded, his voice low but filled with the kind of determination that could cut through the tension in the air. "Prepare for battle. Let's show them what humanity is capable of." The crew was ready. The warship was ready. And Captain Bryce knew that when the first shots were fired, there would be no turning back. The warship's engines hummed with purpose as it closed in on the enemy fleet. Captain Bryce stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the darkening space before them. The enemy fleet loomed larger by the second, its vast numbers stretching across the stars. Hundreds of alien ships, all formed into one deadly alliance, had gathered to challenge humanity's place in the galaxy. It had taken only a moment for Captain Bryce to make his decision. No retreat, no negotiations. The time for talking was over. The galaxy had learned nothing from humanity's previous victory. Now it was time for them to learn the true cost of underestimating the human warrior. "Captain, we're in position," Zara said, her voice steady as always. "Weapons are primed. Shields are at full capacity." Bryce gave a quick nod. "Prepare for impact. Lock on to the lid ship." On the bridge, the crew moved with practiced precision. Each officer knew their role, each hand quick on the console, each breath calm despite the storm that was about to unfold. The tension in the air was palpable, but Bryce's calmness helped steady them all. Through the viewport, Bryce could see the lead alien ship now clearly in view. Its alien markings and jagged structure gave it an intimidating presence, but it was nothing compared to the fury now boiling in the heart of humanity's warship. The ship had been forged in battle, its weapons honed over countless fights, and its crew knew exactly what it meant to be underestimated. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared, the warning sign of incoming fire. The first salvo from the enemy fleet arrived, bright streaks of energy flying toward the human ship. Captain Bryce's grip tightened on the command chair. There was no time for hesitation. "Shields up," he barked. The ship shuddered under the blast, the shields absorbing the enemy's energy, but the force of the hit still sent tremors through the entire ship. Bryce didn't flinch. He knew what he had to do. "Weapons free," he commanded. "Target their lid ship and fire at will." In the blink of an eye, the human warship unleashed its own fury. Waves of energy blasts erupted from the ship's weapons arrays, tearing through the space between them. The enemy ships scattered, trying to evade, but the human warship was faster, more agile. The technology the aliens had deemed inferior was now proving to be their doom. The first alien ship was hit, its shields flaring up in a brilliant explosion of light before it crumpled under the overwhelming firepower. The alien fleet's momentum faltered as the first ship was destroyed in mere seconds. But they weren't done. More alien ships retaliated, and this time, the full wrath of the galaxy's new human power was unleashed. The warship's guns roared to life, and each shot was a death sentence for the enemy. The human crew worked together as one. No hesitation, no mercy. Zara watched in awe as the enemy ships fell, one by one. The human warship was unstoppable, its firepower unmatched, and its crew unyielding. There was no room for doubt now. Humanity was not just a participant in this galaxy. They were the storm. Yet, as the battle raged on, Bryce could see something unexpected. The alien fleet, once so confident in their numbers, was beginning to lose their resolve. Their ships turned erratic, trying to evade the human assault. Panic set in. They hadn't anticipated this level of resistance. "Captain, we've got them on the run," Zora said, her voice filled with disbelief. Bryce's face remained as calm as ever, but his eyes narrowed. "Don't let up. We finish this now." The crew worked with clockwork precision, coordinating every move as the enemy fleet began to retreat, their ships scattering in disarray. The human warship pursued relentlessly, cutting through their lines, delivering a series of devastating blows that sent the enemy fleet into chaos. In the chaos of battle, Bryce's mind remained focused. He had seen enough to know what needed to be done. The galaxy would never again see humanity as weak. Not now. Not after this. He had learned one crucial thing in this fight. When pushed to the edge, humanity didn't break. They fought back, harder than ever. As the last of the enemy ships flooded into the darkness of space, the crew of the warship exhaled in a collective sigh of relief. The battle was won. But Bryce knew this was just one of many challenges they would face. He looked to Zara, his trusted officer. "We've shown them what happens when they mock humanity," he said quietly. Zara nodded, her expression fierce and proud. "And we'll keep showing them." Bryce glanced around the bridge. His crew stood tall, exhausted but triumphant. They had faced overwhelming odds, and yet here they were, victorious. This was the new face of humanity, a face that would not be underestimated. The warship's engines hummed again, and Captain Bryce turned his gaze to the stars, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be more battles, more threats, and more challenges. But humanity was ready, and as long as they had men and women like these, they would never stop fighting. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no longer something to laugh at. It was something to fear.